Well, Judi, thank you for agreeing to be on the UnLearn show. It is absolutely a pleasure, as you can tell, for each one of us to have you here. Um, you've seen the format of it clearly, because I mean, you've already done a spoof on all of us. So we probably just let you be one of the guest interviewers. So, so we're just going to jump right into it. If you're okay with that. If you have any questions, let us know. I'll just give you kind of a format of how it'll go.
Okay, are you sure you don't want me to pump up the crowd?
Oh, you
with a
can
little.
Yeah.
Crowd pumped.
All right, everybody.
Hey.
I don't know why there's no pom-poms and glitter and like little stuff shooting all over the place and fireworks.
That's in post-production, Sonny.
Yes. Insert firework here.
Nope, there's a unicorn. That's a start.
Unicorn pinata flying through. So Judi, welcome to the UnLearn Show, where we talk about breaking bad habits with a purpose. So you've been invited to be a guest on the show today. Thank you on behalf of all the co-hosts. What we'd love for you to do is just give a little bit of an introduction about yourself, who you are, and if there's anything else that you want us to know about you. After that point, each one of the co-hosts will be asking you a question, maybe two. There is no set path that we're going to walk down. If there's something that's of interest, we're going to continue down that path. And then towards the end, once each one of us has a chance to ask you a question and then do a wrap up, we'd love to flip the script and give you the opportunity to ask us anything you'd like. If it's one person, if it's just a general topic, whatever you'd like to do. All right?
All right.
Awesome. So once again, welcome to the UnLearn Show. It's all yours.
Glad to be here. Thank you, all of you. This was a journey. I just checked when I made that first video, and it was 2 months ago that I did that video where I was Chantel and Katie and you, Sonny, and then it was a couple, like maybe 1 month later, I did Laci and Jake, and I'm so glad you guys were all good sports about it. And basically, a little bit about myself. I'm Judi Fox. My hashtag is FoxRocks. And I, going all the way back, I grew up mostly in Richmond, Virginia. And I then moved away for college, did kind of all the normal stuff. I studied chemical engineering. I went out to California and started working my first job. I then moved to Chicago. I got my master's in environmental management. And then this whole time I'm traveling all over the US and international and doing a lot of environmental projects. So that was 10 years of doing that. And then I started my own business. I started doing consulting, environmental consulting, and, you know, at some point got married and then had a kid, and I'm fast forwarding through everything. And basically we moved to Germany and had a lot of adventures there, and then moved back to the US and, you know, just kind of living a little bit normal life in a lot of ways, and kind of fast forwarding through that, the marriage did not work out, basically, and we are not together. And so I'm a single mom. I'm owning it. And it's one of those things that might get talked about a little bit more in this scenario. But basically, made my first video on LinkedIn and had no idea what kind of path would unfold after that. And just kind of my motto at some point was just always take the next right step. So you can't always see 10 steps down the road, but take the next right step. So that's me. That's all.
No, I was actually, if you weren't going to bring up the single mom thing, I was going to, because I have been a single mom as well. And so I've talked some on videos about the struggles that I've had with being a single mom and trying to have a full-time career and trying to make that work. So I would be curious to know what piece of advice you could give single moms, single parents out there making their way, you know, because it's hard. It's really hard. And it's hard to explain the pitfalls and the worries and everything like that. So if there's one piece of advice you could give people, what would that be?
I think the main thing is pause yourself when you think it all has to be done a certain way, and just do it your way and do it the way that's working for your kid and you. And I think that's drowning out some of the advice, drowning out some of the noise. So even my advice, I'm like, drown whatever advice, like you need to do what you need to do. And I think the times I got the most stressed out is when I thought it had to be a certain way, or I thought there was like basically something as simple as I sometimes dress him in the clothes that he's going to wear the next day, and I'm not putting him in PJs at night. And that's, to me, seemed like, really? Is that big of a deal? It just turns out that makes me a better parent in the morning, because in the morning we're not as rushed. We end up having a great morning, great breakfast. And it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that if he's fine with it, I'm fine with it. And then what does society matter? That he's supposed to be in PJs. So.
Absolutely. That's so key. It's so key to figure out how to make your own way, because you can get really wrapped up in thinking that there's mistakes being made when there's really not.
Yeah. And I think that I've learned that that goes with, now he's in kindergarten and all the things that have happened. I just kind of try to dial it back and say, it's going to be okay. Not everything has to be perfect, and he's doing amazing. And I think the things that make him thrive are when I'm thriving. So I just try to do what I can, that we're all of us thriving.
Absolutely.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I love that this awkward silence happened, because you totally nailed it in your spoof videos. You have like this weird time when everybody's just kind of looking at each other like, who's gonna talk next, guys?
Yeah. Do you have like paddles or something you can raise?
I know, we should have a better cue or like lineup, but this is all just going with the flow. It's all organic. Okay, love that. Love that you're super authentic about doing the single mom marathon, right? Because I hate doing this, but in the morning I have to bribe my 4-year-old with chocolate just to put on pants, and it is what it is, right? But
why don't they like pants?
I don't know. Why don't they like to put on clothes? They just like their birthday suit. Anyways, maybe it's a boys thing. I
don't know. You should ask Katie. I'm pretty sure it's not a boys thing.
So when you are such an amazing professional, and I love your engineering background and the fact that, you're not just a single mother, but you're a woman working in a very male dominated field. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience there and how you've overcome any of that bias?
I think, yes. Basically, starting off, going through college, I just was myself. I didn't really see the difference of being in a male-dominated field, because I was with a lot of other women in our chemical engineering classes. And then when I got out into a mining site, it was all men. There were some women, which were amazing, but I would say the very first comments were, are you a secretary? Are you an administrator? Are you, what are you doing out in the field in your hard hat and your steel toe boots and your gear climbing towers? And I got a lot of resistance from a lot of men. It wasn't necessarily coming from a place, it was coming from a place of, this is what they're normally used to seeing in the middle of the desert in a mine. So I'm just walking around like, okay, this is what we're going to do next. And I'm, working on installing a pipeline through the desert and project managing these projects. So I think when I moved up to Chicago, I kind of thought that it would be a little bit different, but I actually encountered a different type of being in a male-dominated field and what response I would get. And so one of the biggest things that happened to me was when they did a 360 survey. And during that 360 survey, which basically means you get reviews back from everyone that you work with, above, below, and same level. And those comments were really, really hard. And some of them were amazing and I took them to heart. And some of them were really surprising to hear, things like the statement that I sounded too young to be taken seriously. I sounded too female to be taken seriously, that my voice needed to be lowered, that I needed to hire a voice coach. I was told I was using either too much makeup or not too much makeup. I was told maybe I should go tan. I was told to get a different wardrobe. I mean, so many things were told to me. And I was like, what? I mean, I get it. If you're trying to improve your career, there are sometimes, if you're going to be on a public stage, I can see why some people might want to dress you a certain way or brand you a certain way. But I'm working in an office and I'm saying to myself, for me to get ahead and become a vice president, this is what I have to do. And I just don't. And I had one specific person say, you can come to work, put on your wig and be a different person for 8 hours and then go home and be whoever you want to be at the end of the day. And I told them, I said, I didn't think I was that great of an actress. So.
Wow, that's insane that you had to deal with all of that feedback and put up with it, right? Do you have one piece of advice, especially on social media? You know, if you're going to put yourself out there and be a creator, I think we're all subjects to those comments, right? Do you have one piece of advice that you could give to men or women who are getting those remarks on their videos, you know, when they see people?
I think the biggest thing I do is I try to soak up, and I take so much energy to focus on the positive comments that now that I've created this boundary where if I get a negative comment, I have decided personally for myself, because that goes back to that theory. I know if I'm thriving, my child is thriving. So if those comments pull me down, I nix them. I just delete them, or I delete that person. I mean, I just have to do it because that is protecting myself and my child. And it kind of goes all the way back to that. Whatever protects me protects him.
Rock on. Thank you.
So I wanted to go back to that particular situation because I don't know, I hear a lot of stories about like horror stories like that. And so how exactly did you handle that situation? And did you stay with that company? I guess just what was like your resolution and what was the resolution within the company?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did stay with them mainly because the conversations that were had, some of them were with an external consulting firm. So an external consulting firm kind of came in and summarized the 360 survey and tried to create a plan to move forward. And so I then ended up talking with HR and kind of explained how comments on my skin tone, comments on my voice, those kinds of comments were not, I was like, do you not see the problem here? Would you tell somebody they're too dark skinned? Would you tell somebody they're too anything? Like, that's just, that's that. And so it was handled very professionally from that point forward. And they were respectful about that. And then I obviously had at that time a manager that explained a lot of things or just went over how there were some maybe mistakes made or just they were so pushing to look at how to mold somebody into what a VP at that company would look like, that they forgot that sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, yes, we want somebody to fit some specific mold, but maybe that's not the correct way it's not the correct way to do it. So it's very interesting. In the end, they ended up linking me with a mentor, and it ended up that she is now the CEO of that company. So that was the mentor that they had connected me with kind of after that had happened, because in the end they said, actually, we should probably focus on getting her connected with a woman who is higher in the company to connect with. And I feel like there was another part I was supposed to address, and I'm trying to figure what that is out.
The other part was the resolution for you. Like, how did you, because I know personally, like I couldn't just be like, oh, they were, you know, like they were just coming from this place. Like, how did you resolve as well?
Immediately I cried a ton. And then after that, I talked to my sister. I have two sisters, and I remember specifically talking to one sister about it right away. And she connected me with somebody who then, you know, it kind of went down that path of, I ended up eventually talking to a lawyer to say, is this, you know, something that is serious? Or, I mean, it's really difficult to kind of form your own words when you don't necessarily need legal action, but to know that there is somebody who is in that world that could help you. So basically she mentored me through the situation and talked with me through it and said, here's how you would talk about it with HR without, and kind of starting to remove a little bit of, yes, that was personal about me, but honestly, I was doing the conversation to protect anyone else that ever would have something said about them and their skin tone or how they look or what they sound like, to then say that's not a thing that you would say to try and get them to the upper management level, unless they literally ask you some random question about their body. You just don't need to do that. Would you say somebody's too overweight to become, and they've got 20 extra pounds, and to become a VP, they have to lose those 20 pounds? I mean, that's pretty intense. So, but I cried a lot at the beginning. I will admit that.
So Judi, I'm curious, going back to actually to the beginning, what the trajectory of your kind of personal growth and life looked like when you went through divorce and kind of becoming a different family unit, and how that just affected you as a professional, and just how did your trajectory change when all that happened?
My trajectory completely changed, and that's part of why I'm even on LinkedIn the way that I am now, because basically that was a really, really, really tough time in my life. And I think anyone's life that goes through no matter what it looks like, that is a tough path to walk. And there's a lot of social, even having this conversation and acknowledging it makes you almost feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to talk about that. We're supposed to kind of gloss all that over as if there's something wrong with it, or it's really, really kind of a scary thing to start talking about it. But I'm not afraid. I'm trying not to be afraid. And basically it was the hardest time in my entire life to navigate. And I obviously immediately turned to family and friends, which I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, is to, when you're in a healthy place, fill up those buckets of good relationships and positiveness and all the things that you can do to build your kind of safety net of resiliency. Basically, like when things are really bad, you're going to need your family and all those, you know, if you constantly treated people poorly and then all of a sudden you turn to your family and you're like, I need you, that's, you know, they hopefully will still come through, but it just made me value those relationships more. I'm not perfect, but it made me value them. And it made me also, during that time, I said to myself, which is why I took myself 4 years to get back on social media, because it made me realize what I went through, that a lot of what you put in writing or on video or anything, if twisted, can be turned as a negative against you. And it's really scary. But now I feel like I'm just trying to be myself so much that how could it ever be turned against me? Like, what would I ever say wrong other than being myself? That's all I can hope for. And that I can hope that by being myself, I attract all the right people and all the right companies and all the right connections to do amazing work. Because you're going to do even better work if you're working for people that just get you, or get get your energy, get your vibe, get who you are, get that you could bring something amazing to the table. And you know what I mean? I think you all know what I mean, because you're all doing it. You're all putting yourselves out there so authentically, and you find all the right people. And the moments that I am inspired the most is when people say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm so glad you opened up, because I'm going through something similar, or I have struggled with something similar and I had no idea.
So what, can you share one of those moments that you've been really proud of, like something that you shared where it's kind of come back to you?
I think that I posted on Facebook and Instagram that I was at the beach, and I actually had a really tough time at the beach. It was not an easy trip, and I'm forming memories and amazing moments with my 6-year-old, but at the same time, some of those moments are mixed in with mixed emotions. And I mean, I've been a single parent for 4 years, and this beach trip just happened. And I mean, we've been on many trips, but that one, for some reason in particular, I'm sitting on the beach and I'm just watching all these families. And I just started crying behind my sunglasses, because there was, you know, a family right next to me, and the dad is saying to the mom, you know, hey, why don't you go take a walk down the beach? Or why don't you sit and read your book and I'll go play with the kids? And he's giving her this moment of downtime. And I'm sitting right next to it going, I'm literally on the edge of my seat at all moments, making sure my child's alive in the waves, and not like, I can't take my eye off him for a moment. I can't read a book or go for a walk down the beach or do something. I'm not saying it's just that moment that hits you, that you're like, wow, like, people say all the time, oh, how was your beach trip? You read some books, you relax. I'm like, I didn't relax at all. I was literally on and I had a great time. We rode the waves. We had an amazing time. But I made that post, and it's the first time I announced to anyone. I never said anything on Facebook, never said anything on Instagram. And that is the first time I said anything. And I got phone calls, I got emails, I got so much feedback that it's insane, that people were like, I had no idea, and I love you. And I think that post also just lifted up other people. So
So can you stay on that theme of intersection of family, right? So you started off with being a single parent. You talked about the professional aspect for you. Can you take us back to that moment, you know, as you reflect upon it now, of, you know, when the divorce, right? So that personal, when everything happened, and it's the UnLearn Show, what did you have to unlearn to end up where you are now? Now that you have the opportunity to look at it, take us back to, what did you have to unlearn to get to where you are today?
Oh my gosh. I think the biggest thing I had to unlearn was that you can have a plan, all the plans in the world, and something can just completely blow up. And you have to navigate now this completely shrapneled, blown up world. I literally considered my life that I was taken down to the studs, that I felt like I had nothing. And I didn't know, when you look back, you can see that it all worked out and it all was okay. But in that exact moment, I literally left with what I could in my car. Like, that's how, like, I've started my life over at 38 years old with only what I could put in my car. And I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know if it was going to reconcile. I didn't know if it was not. I literally didn't know what was going to happen next. All I could do was go like this and do the next right thing. Like, literally, like, crossing a raging river is kind of this visual I had in my head. And I was just going to step on that next right rock. And I literally put that up on my wall. I made a manifesto of a list of 10 things that I was just going to, like, live and die by. And it was so powerful. I just literally wrote it out of, like, extreme pain and tears. And it was so focused on, stop trying to figure out what you're going to do down the road. Stop trying to figure out what the answer is. Stop freaking trying, I was going to say something else, but stop trying to figure anything else, because it could all change. I could get more information. I could get something else could show up. Something else could hit me from the side. I didn't know. And I just kind of just kept saying, like, step on the next right rock. So I would just do the next right rock, just do the next right rock. It was literally that, like, life or death kind of moment. Like, it sounds very dramatic, but it was very intense. It was an intense time in my life. So, and I ended up, to be really honest, I ended up going to court twice, and having to fight for the ability to have time with my child, like to have custody and to raise him. And that, to think that when you reach a point where text messages are being read out loud in front of strangers, and things that you've written or put on the internet or anything you've ever said being used against you for 3 hours, and a judge is going to decide if that is worth you then being able to raise your own child, that just feels completely insane. And to have it be done twice was the painfulness of those 4 years, which is why I didn't put a single word out on the internet. I was barely texting anybody. Like, I just couldn't fathom that my own words were being used against me. Like, words, and I'm being really personal here. It's really scary, but I mean, it's the truth. I was texting and saying things like, hey, today's a rough day. He's been teething all day. Can I get a chance to go to Target by myself? And that was literally read out loud, as if that didn't make me a good mother, that I needed a break to go to Target. And I'm so grateful to this day that after hearing all of that, the judge sat there and said, she sounds like an extremely normal mother who just sometimes needed to go to Target by herself. And I remember there was one other text where I said, being a single, I was just alone with him when he was really young. And, you know, his dad was out of town. And I texted and said, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I don't know how single parents do it. Because that's honest. It is hard. And like to feel like that was read in a way that should mean that a parent should, that's crazy. You can admit something's hard and still it's the most amazing thing you ever want to do in your entire life. It's like your job. It's like your entrepreneurialism. It's like anything in your whole life. You can say, it's okay to say it's hard. Doesn't mean you don't keep doing it. So, oh gosh.
Agreed completely. So take that, and what would you tell your son 10 years down the road? What's one thing that we've asked, you know, each one of us has asked you to share something for somebody else that's out there. Share something that you want to tell him.
Oh my gosh. I want to tell him that both his parents love him a ton, that he is loved by his entire family. Basically, love can solve things. And sometimes in those moments in life where people kind of forget that, and they get in so much pain that they forget things. But if you literally circle back to love, you'll find your way through.
That's awesome. Judi, we're going to open it back up for all the co-hosts to see if they had anything else they wanted to ask. So just give us a couple minutes here, okay?
Yeah.
All right. It looks like, Katie, go for it.
Yeah, I think this may have an ask at the end of it. I don't know yet, but I was just going to say, holy crap. Like, I can so relate to that. And it's this is one of the topics that people don't really touch on. Number one, the parenting thing. Like, everybody's like, oh, parenting is amazing and beautiful. But what they don't talk about is like the not sleeping, the being a zombie, the hating your partner, the being miserable, like being able to, like, not being able to, like, just step outside for 2 seconds to breathe because this, like, thing that is, like, new here on earth, like, really needs you to sustain life. Like, people don't talk about that, right? And then on the other end of that spectrum, like, becoming a single mom, like, like you hit on that. And so I hope a lot of people will see this. And like, I know I could relate to it because I'm a single mom too. And, so much so now that it's like almost difficult for me to be in a relationship because it's been me and my daughter against the world for so long, And yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I think these are things that should be talked about, but they're just not yet. And so the more we can have these conversations, the more that other people can start to have these conversations and heal. So
yeah, there's a lot of healing, and I thank you for talking about it too. And I feel like, again, I think I'm like sweating bullets because I'm so nervous because it's not an easy subject. It's scary. I don't ever want to hurt, anyone else, but it is the truth. It's what happened. And it's not, I literally think people just do things in pain because they're just in so much pain. And I'm not saying I was in pain too. Like everyone, when you're in pain, but even, married couples can be in pain and then try to fight through it. But during that time, they still have to be parents. It is so damn hard. So I think marriage is hard, being single parent is hard. And in those moments, what really matters is trying to raise good kids. And that's why, like, trying to share these stories is not about bashing anybody or hurting anything. It's literally that adults can be in pain, and we sometimes can cause each other pain, but at the end of the day, it matters for our kids to do the right thing by them.
And there's nothing wrong with target therapy at all. Okay?
So
Nothing wrong.
So Judi, the floor is all yours. And I think we have to say, for a start, before turning it over to you, your start of the spoof for each one of us, just the fact that you would say, I don't know how they're going to take it. I can tell you, hands down, every single one of us was laughing the entire time at how you portrayed every single one of us. So that was actually one of the funniest moments I think you had in terms of a conversation. So try not to do that again, as you have the table now, but it's all yours. It's yours to run now. So go for it.
Oh, I mean, first of all, I just think, this show and everybody that's been on it and what they've shared is so powerful. And thank you for doing this show. I know it's not, from what I've learned or unlearned, it's not easy to keep something going. And the fact that you guys have all stuck together and kept this going, like, congratulations. Or wait, the air horn, like, it definitely deserves an air horn moment. I mean, this is so much work. And so again, I know the floor is mine, but I want to spend that time. Like, I want to just be like, thank you guys. I want to also say to everyone watching this, I'm scared as crap to put this out there. Like, this is not an easy thing to say. And I think, we're all trying to navigate what we put out there. But at the same time, I've reached a point, and maybe you guys have all reached a point, where sometimes it's like, these conversations matter. And they also matter in business, because we don't just come to work as these like robots. And I think they're just, to think that we could have companies that are a little more cognizant of when an employee is going through something, or that it's not something that's so, I've constantly heard the description that if you're going through something, you don't tell your company, because they'll use it against you, or they'll put a black mark on you. And that's really scary. And maybe that's why there just needs to be more of these conversations, or companies hopefully could change a little bit. I don't know how the change is going to happen, other than I want it to happen. And that's a good place to start.
Awesome. Well, Judi, once again, on behalf of all the co-hosts, thank you so much for giving up part of your evening for us, and for some of us morning. We're thrilled to have you as a guest today.
Yay.